Hey everyone, Kelsey from Kelsey's Pole Journey here, and I am ready to answer your questions that you had for me about pole dancing. The overwhelming majority of you want to know about what my pole training schedule is like, how many days a week that I train, how long I train per session, good things like that. So let's get into it. Currently, I am training about 3 days a week. That is the upper limit for me and my body and my skill level. You'll see some really elite pole dancers being like, oh, I trained 7 days a week for 2 hours a day, and I'm not quite sure how they pulled that one off. So for me personally, 3 days a week is like the max. Some weeks it's closer to 2 times a week. Some weeks I only get 1 training session in, so it's all about listening to my body. 1 day a week is completely devoted to conditioning. So I set my pole onto static, I do my conditioning exercises, strength training, grip training, skin conditioning, all that good stuff. I don't recommend skipping your conditioning because it will really slow down your progress if you don't devote some time to doing these exercises. And then the other 1 or 2 training sessions a week, I usually put my pole onto spin, and then I train for specific moves, or if I'm trying to learn a routine, like when I learned the JLo routine, that would be a training session like that. My training sessions last anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour. That does include a pretty long, extensive warm-up, and then at the end, I will do at least 10 minutes of cool-down stretches. Sometimes I really treat myself to like a 20-minute long stretch session afterwards. About 9 months ago, when I got the pole in my home, a conditioning session for me lasted probably no more than 15 minutes, and I could do like 3 exercises, and I was completely exhausted, and I only knew a couple of moves and spins, so a regular session only lasted about 15 minutes. Now that I have a bigger repertoire of exercises that I can do and routines or moves that I'm working on, my pole sessions have become longer and longer. And that will naturally happen as your body gets stronger and your endurance goes up. Next question. How do I decide which moves to learn? I do have this book of pole moves here, and I just sometimes work my way through the beginner to intermediate range. I also find inspiration from people on YouTube, including some of you, and Instagram, but I do have a word of caution about Instagram that you will hear more about later. What are my basic foundational tips for beginners? Being aware of momentum is a wonderful technique to develop early on, especially if you're working with spin pole. A lot of beginners have a tendency to really throw themselves against the pole, and then that makes them spin incredibly fast and they get sick and they're like, oh, pole is not for me. Body awareness is another wonderful thing as a foundational technique. If you are someone who only pole dances as your only physical activity, I recommend picking up something else that utilizes both your brain and your body at the same time. You know, yoga or strength training, or it could even be playing a musical instrument or like juggling or something. Just really connecting the brain and the body is going to help you a lot when you're trying to figure out what to do with all your limbs at the same time. And then my third foundational technique for beginners would be just learning how to squeeze your muscles. I know that sounds kind of stupid, but there are so many moves that's like the difference between you getting the move and you sliding right off is just how much you can just, squeeze your muscles together. That segues me nicely into what is my advice for beginners. So here is where I'm coming back to the Instagram thing. I know I said that I draw inspiration from seeing people on Instagram, but that is my top tip for beginners to avoid doing. It's so easy to see someone do something cool on Instagram and then you're like, yeah, I could do that, of course. And especially if you have a home studio, you try it by yourself and you hurt yourself. And yes, that sounds like a do as I say, not as I do, but even for me, if I'm looking at something on Instagram, it's usually something that I've been trained in the movements, at least with an instructor back when I used to take pole classes, or I know that it is like a beginner basic move. Hey everyone, Editing Kelsey here. I came across this post on Pole Lols basically saying, hey, can we as a pole community agree to stop tagging higher level moves as beginner because people are hurting themselves trying to do them? That's a big part of the reason I discourage you from seeking inspiration on Instagram when you first start out, because if you're an absolute beginner, you really can't differentiate between actual beginner-appropriate moves and the ones that high-level dancers will just tag as beginner, either because it's easy for them or to boost themselves in the algorithm. It might seem like it's a common sense thing, like you wouldn't look at someone doing an Iron X or something and believe it's really beginner, but it's not always so extreme. Good pole dancers make even the hardest moves look easy, so if they're easily doing a dangerous move and tagging it as beginner, you wouldn't even know you were about to get yourself into trouble until you tried it. Once you have enough pole experience under your belt, you'll start to understand which moves are actually appropriate for your level, but give yourself at least a few months of either consistent training or in-person classes with a qualified teacher before you even start to pull your moves from the internet. Okay, lecture over. Bye! Okay, my next tip for beginners is to prepare yourself mentally for the pain. Yeah, we know pole hurts, but it really hurts. And it can feel completely draining to be purposefully putting yourself in a situation where you're in pain. You might even think to yourself like, well, this is so foolish. Why am I paying money for the privilege of walking out of here with tons of bruises? So if you're able to just get yourself in the headspace of like, yes, it's gonna hurt, it will get better over time, I can do this, that will go a long way. For example, when I started doing cross knee releases, I got stuck just at the tipping point for so long because it hurts really, really bad right there. And all I needed to do was just go a little bit further back, really commit to the move, and I would have gotten through it. And then, of course, give yourself some grace. It is very frustrating to mess up a move, especially if you're the only person not getting it. But remember, things take time. Nobody's good at anything the first time they try it, and progress is not linear. That takes us to tips for attending class in a studio for the first time. Look at these wonderful segues. The most important thing for me to say about taking an in-person class with other people around you is that comparison is the thief of joy. Maybe someone's getting a move really quick and you're not, or someone's body looks different from yours. Just remember, you're all there to have the experience of learning to pole dance in a studio environment, and you are paying for that experience, and you are just as worthy of being there as everyone else is. Try to encourage your fellow classmates, and I'm sure they'll do the same for you, and don't compare yourself to them. I'm telling you right now. Another huge thing that I don't think we talk about enough in in-person classes is learning how to advocate for yourself. Pole is dangerous, aerial arts are hard, it's, can be overwhelming when a lot of things are going on in class, so I want you to feel comfortable speaking up and getting what you need. For example, once in a pole class, I stepped to the side so that I could just take a little breather, and the instructor walked up to me and said, "Unless you're dying, you better be doing the routine with everyone else." No. You are allowed to take breaks. Take a breather, or drink some water, or stretch, or just give yourself a second to sort of calm down if you're feeling overwhelmed by what's going on. You're also allowed to ask for a mat. Maybe no one else is using a mat, but you feel uncomfortable without one. You are allowed to say, "I would like to have a mat underneath me." You're allowed to ask the instructor for more help if you're not getting it. I want you to feel comfortable advocating for yourself. And obviously the grain of salt is like, it's not the you show. It's not your time to commandeer the spotlight and make the instructor spend all their time on you. But like I said, you are paying to be there just like everyone else. So make sure that you feel comfortable and safe and like you're getting the resources that you need. I also recommend trying out whatever clothes that you're going to wear to your pole class at home before you go. Some people show up, strip everything off, and they're in just like the tiniest scraps of clothing, and that is awesome for them. Some people show up and are wearing, a tank top and some biker shorts that they roll up, and that's awesome for them. It doesn't matter which category you fall into as long as you are comfortable in the clothing and you have enough exposed skin that it's going to be safe for you to stick to the pole. But I'm telling you to try on your clothes because there have been times that I'm like, ooh, here's some cute little shorts. And then I go to class and the second that I'm doing like a straddle, I feel a breeze. Make sure that you can actually move in your desired clothing. And then we also have how often to go to in-person classes. Some studios will offer a sort of package that if you're taking a class, you also get to go to the open gyms or conditioning sessions that they offer. So if you can go more often than just the one time a week, that's awesome. Totally take advantage of that. How long did it take me to invert? Well, I filmed this video today, 9 months after I started my pole journey at home. And as you can see, I'm not getting the invert. I mean, yeah, obviously you guys have seen me do moves where I am upside down. I can do inversions. There was just something that was not working with my body today. But yeah, probably around like the 4-month mark was when I got my first like proper inversion. For some people, it could be as quick as a couple of weeks, and some people it might take an entire year. A lot of it depends on your body composition. So like I've mentioned before, my lower body is a lot heavier than my upper body. So for me to lift these big heavy legs above my head requires quite a lot of strength. I also am someone who's been pretty athletic all her life, so I already had a pretty high fitness level. If pole is the first and only thing that you've ever done, it might take you a really long time to invert. and that's totally fine. The most important thing is that you are learning to do it properly. I would rather see you with perfect form, barely get your feet off the ground, than throw yourself back and hook your leg on the pole and fling yourself up there and, you know, hurt your back. How did I pick out my pole and what are its specifications? When I was ordering my pole, I wanted to get an X pole and they were completely sold out. So I went with Loop It. I would say X pole and Loop It should really be the only options that you consider. Some people feel comfortable with like Amazon brand poles. I would really just rather go with the reputable brands and spend a little bit of extra money to know that the pole is going to be safe and secure. So that's how I chose Loop It brand. I chose the height because my ceilings are 9 feet tall and this pole can go up to 9 feet. The width is 45 millimeters. They did offer, I believe, 40 or 45 or 50 millimeters. 50 is way too big for my hands and 40 is really uncommon to find in the United States, so I just went with the usual 45 millimeter width. The surface is powder coated and I don't know what happened. In my head, I'm like, oh, powder, you know, it's dry, it's easy to grip. No, it's just like a worse coating than chrome. Chrome is what you're gonna find in the vast majority of studios and it's easier to grip, I think, than powder coated. I should have just gotten chrome. This pole can switch between static and spin, which is a feature that I really wanted, and I highly recommend that for a home pole because it makes it so much more versatile. And it is pressure mounted, so the only thing holding it up is between the floor and the ceiling and the pole in between. So the time that I knocked it loose, it didn't damage the ceiling because it's not screwed in there. And it did come loose because I hadn't been tightening it enough and the are loosened. What do I find the most challenging and rewarding about pole dancing? The most challenging thing for me, like I mentioned in the video, if pole is the most difficult aerial sport, it looks really easy to pole dance. And it is really hard to pole dance when you're watching someone effortlessly do moves, and for you it feels like, am I stupid? Am I weak? What's going on here? Why can't I get this thing? It can be really tough to overcome those mental barriers and to tell yourself that, you know, oh, it just takes time. And the most rewarding thing about pole dancing is actually sharing it with all of you. Someone also asked me, how do I stay motivated? And same answer, this YouTube channel makes me feel so good to be able to share things that are going on. I am someone who has a flair for the dramatic and maybe likes attention a little bit. So being able to be like, hey, here's this really cool hard skill I'm working on, let me put it out in the world and see what people think of it, is a great way for me to stay inspired and stay motivated and keep going, really. Okay, let's talk about my accessories. This mat, which is bright pink, which is not one of my favorite colors, is from Amazon. So unfortunately, I am lining the pockets of
Jeff Bezos, that capitalist pig.
But like I said, with X-Pole being sold out of things, Loop It was sold out of their mats, so I did have to order it from Amazon. I highly recommend getting yourself a pole-specific mat. Get one that goes all the way around the pole. I don't want to see any of you with like a little yoga mat on each side of the pole with a bunch of blank space right here. As for the grip, I have here this tight grip. This is like a dry hands knockoff. I don't know why I didn't just get dry hands, but whatever. And then this one is called GRRRIP. I saw it on Pole with Aaron's channel and it's like impossible to track down for some reason, but I'll find a link and put it in the description. This makes your hands powdery. Well, that's it for the questions. Thank you so much to those who asked me, and I hope that these answers have satisfied you. Please consider liking and subscribing and joining the party here on Kelsey's pole journey. I'll see you all next time. Bye!